Journey into Irish Music, the podcast. Part 2 of my interview with Bob Banerjee. Cue the intro. The history of Irish music is as rich and magical as the island itself. Join me as we travel across Ireland and even down to the local pub to discover what makes Irish music so fascinating. This is Journey into Irish Music. So let me bring you up to speed. I'm speaking with Bob Banerjee. Now, Bob came over to America from India at age 3, arrived in Texas, started playing violin, eventually made it to Pittsburgh, where he started playing fiddle, folk music, Irish music, got so good that he attracted the attention of Gaelic Storm and ended up touring with them for over a year. And Bob and I have been talking about why he plays Irish music and why he loves playing music in general. So we'll pick it right back up.
All my life, I had been trying to find ways of getting less of a wall between the audience and me. My idea of a musical performance is not to walk on stage with a set list and to gauge my success as to whether I have finished everything on that set list. I don't think that's fair in an interactive environment. Now, if I'm in a performance hall, okay, which all of us are, if we're lucky to do that, that's a different story altogether. That is the opportunity for you to make your mark, to be able to do your performance and get people to engage with themselves on their own. And then after the gig is over, to consider your body of work, your collection, and be able to see how that affects. You know, there's with the passing of John Prine, I'm really surprised, not surprised either, I take that back, of the outpouring of people that have related to his music, both from an interactive standpoint and just being able to put on a song that was written 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and still be able to have as much fun with that song.
Oh, absolutely. And it was so surprising to me to see the various, like a lot of my friends who I'd never thought were John Prine fans were expressing their grief on the various social media, Facebook and things like that. And I've been playing John Prine in my sets for years. Paradise is always.
I agree with you. And then love songs like Angel from Montgomery, which is one of the first songs that I do non-violin oriented songs, but when I play guitar and when I have a set, I love doing that song because it's a folk song. It describes relationships. It describes the path of a relationship. I think that's great. Right. And again, based on your question, why do musicians play music? Why do I play the kind of music? It's because I want people to have a emotional or visceral response to what I'm doing. Right. I want to make you laugh. I write stupid songs, okay? And I write really heartfelt songs. So some of my songs are stupid, like La 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 Beer Me. And some of them are really deep songs like Oh How the Girl Keeps Her Smile, which is what I wrote for my wife. These are things that I've recorded and I've done in public, but nothing makes me happier than seeing a response, whether it's a dad joke groan that comes after it, or whether it's a deep appreciation of how in one song I was able to capture what relationship with my disabled wife is like. So those are the kind of things that make me move. But the thing that makes me happiest most is an interactive, non-barriered musical performance where people are drawn in at the same time to my music, leading directly to why play Irish music. Right. Because it is foot stomping, beer drinking, hand clapping. It's rowdy pub music. I love the term pub music because Corned Beef and Curry Band is definitely a pub band. We love being in the middle of crowds and getting the interaction. As a musician, I know other musicians can relate instantly. When you get an entire crowd all singing, whether it's something like No, Nay, Never, when they're singing it all together, or whether it's Danny Boy, where they're all singing it under their breath, but knowing that it means so many different things. It is so cool to get that interaction. Irish music does that. When we had a previous conversation, Craig, where I said Appalachian music, country music, they're all cousins. They're all derivatives. Absolutely. it's funny how you can take the same 3 or 4 chords and you can add folk temperament behind it, and you can get songs that last forever. They're historical legacies, people that have done this.
In your opinion, what makes a song Irish music?
A technical answer is that if it's an Irish tune, it's written to be ultimately folk lore. It's designed to tell a story. There are ballads, like the ballad of Where Are You Going, Willie McBride. I think the song is called Willie McBride.
Green Fields of France.
Green Fields of France. One of the saddest songs, but it describes World War I in a way that people can only get from the feeling of this young man from the Isles. I mean, that's a beautiful song, and it makes it Irish because of the ballad purpose of it. And that is how their histories and their experiences were parlayed communications wise to others. And here's what's really cool. Others would hear that song and say, not much different from what goes on in my village and what goes on in my life.
Right.
And ultimately that allowed them to add verses or change things to personalize it, and then take that and build upon that song. And
I think that's important because, and I don't want to necessarily mean up here, I'm just kind of geeking out on this as well.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of highlight that. That is another hallmark of Irish music is the tunes often stay the same, but the words change. And you'll hear songs that have the exact same tune. They'd be a completely different song. Wearing of the Green and Rising of the Moon.
Exactly. And for all intents and purposes, you could even have the same chords from different counties. They may have their own county version of doing that. But you're so right. And isn't that typical of what folk music should be about? There's only so many things you can do with that. But then you start adding things, like you start adding different rhythms. The Bodhrán starts playing some different type of cadences when they're going on. Or the guitar has a different drone to it to make that happen.
Right.
And that's how there's such the diversity of the Irish music is based upon how those kind of things are done. But
and they could be a completely different feel too.
Yeah.
Like generally Loch Lomond and Red is the Rose are often played the same, but completely different tone as far as the song itself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And those are perfect examples. Those two in particular are perfect examples because I've had people ask me to do that in our band, like at different times at night, one song for Loch Lomond and one for Red is the Rose. And it's weird because as we start playing, it's like, did we just travel back in time? Because we're playing the same basic song.
Right.
But it's great because that is folk music. I mean, and again, let's tie that into Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, or something like that. There's all the 3-chord, 4-chord stuff that's out there that has lasted as folk, Appalachian, country, Irish, Celtic artists bring a story. And Irish music is great for stories. Absolutely. Anybody that knows an Irish person, a true Irish person, one of the most important things to do when you're listening to an Irish person is you understand that they have stories to tell. And they will not have a shortage of stories.
Not at all.
A true Irish person, a true person from Ireland, or being a descendant of Irish people here, they will have stories for you. That's incredible. And those stories are put with some background music, and they become the Irish music tradition that is being passed along. I love that idea of sharing those stories and sharing that feeling with a crowd. And
that's that's existed in Ireland. There's a word for it. It's called crack.
It is indeed. C-R-A-I-C.
Yes, not Craig, which is how my name is spelled with a G. The crack. And there's no real definition for it. It's just exactly what we've been talking about. It's getting together, that energy. Yes. Maybe it's just talking. Maybe it's just chat. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's a session. But whatever it is, it's going on where everybody is.
Exactly. The best way that I can give an English word for it, crack, is essentially it's a party. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a hoo-ha party,
Right.
but it's a gathering. It's people that are having, whether it's campfire, whether it's around a bar drinking table, whether it's Oktoberfest all together,
Right.
it's all that. That's all the crack. That's a merriment that is meant to be had by that camaraderie.
So let's switch gears for a slight second, because I want to talk about, I always try to have an educational piece in any of these sorts of things I do.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it before, but I want to kind of briefly touch on it. And I'll have some fun graphics and everything spinning around, I'm sure, by the time this happens. But we hear the term Irish fiddle, and we hear the term violin or violinist. So briefly, tell me what the difference is between playing the violin and playing the fiddle.
All right, so the difference between a fiddle and a violin, okay, is it's the same instrument. It's the same instrument in the same way that a guitar played by Eddie Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix, and Edge from U2 and B.B. King. They're all playing the same guitar. So the difference in fiddle and violin is style. It's taking the same hardware and then making it so that it's more adaptable to the music. Where the Irish and Celtic music puts this to play is that they, at times, unlike classical, where violin was meant to be a voice in a choir of other instruments, unlike that, the fiddle fits in well at a barnyard dance.
Right.
So it's a good thing where you don't need to worry about it. You can make it percussive, you can make it melodic, you can make it so that you can lead people in a dance and people can listen to that and make that happen. Then you start adding things like a bodhrán. Then you start adding things like guitar and whatever else. And all of a sudden it becomes a bigger picture. So the fiddle and the violin are stylistically different, even though hardware-wise, they're essentially using the same thing. Now, whereas the classical violinists make this more technical, even in the way that their violins are set up, fiddle players, because it's all about the sound and noise, they may adjust their bridges, they may adjust the strings, they may adjust all of these so that it becomes louder and more folky. So I'll just end with this thought that classical musicians are just as able to play fiddling tunes as fiddlers are able to play a classical tune. It is a matter of getting whoever's playing it and where they go with it. So hopefully that describes in a short way of what the difference is.
Absolutely. And we talked about the rhythm as well, and the infectious rhythm. And that's one of the hallmarks of Irish music is the jig. The jig is sort of on the forefront of what people tend to think of when you think of Irish traditional music, trad music. And a jig is a 3/4 rhythm, right?
Right? So very
Right.
popular. Irish Washerwoman is what it's called, that particular jig. You're right. It's so not meaning to stop you, but you're right.
Oh, no, go ahead.
The jig is very popular, right? The other one that's very common that most people will see are reels. Reels are similarly arranged in terms of folkiness, but the difference between the two is the rhythms they use. It's the same difference between using a waltz and a hoedown. Okay, a waltz follows. I'd like to do you a waltz in 4. There are rules.
Right.
Similarly, there are rules of what does a jig in 3/time or 6/time or 6/8 time. Right. There are rules for jigs. They're either in 2/4, 4/4.
Reels are 2/4. Reels are 2/4.
Reels are 2/4.
Right, and then
jigs are 3s.
Polkas are 2/4.
Polkas, hornpipes.
Hornpipes.
Okay, so there's and then there's things that are really cool, like slip jigs, where they'll go through and they'll add in one bar. They'll add a note for 4,
right.
and
which is impossible. It's impossible. And one of the best known slip jigs is Rocky Road to Dublin.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
For context, anybody who's not a musician, and you can sort of see the difficulty in the chorus, how it comes together. Hunt the hare and turn it down the Rocky Road all the way to Dublin. So that's where you get that extra note in there, that extra beat.
Yes,
it's so fun to listen to, but hard to play.
Though?
Yeah,
Who thought of that. You know what we'll do to really screw things up? You know, especially for the dancers, we'll put in one more where they got to figure out where that left leg comes in again twice.
Right. Hopefully you have some sort of semblance of rhythm, because if someone throws a slip jig at you, it's over.
You are so right.
But something I was told, another thing to make it more accessible, was when I went to, when I was hanging out with some musicians in Ireland, when then we're telling people, if you don't want to know the difference and you don't know much about music and you want to know the difference between the beat, if it's a jig or a reel, is if you can say it's a jig, if you can speak the rhythm as rashers and sausages, rashers and sausages, rashers and sausages. And the reel is Black and Decker, Black and Decker, Black and Decker.
Very good. Very good. So, I've not heard that, but I totally relate to that. I totally relate to that. I like it.
Right. So, and again, it just, if, we're sort of geeking out on this music and talking, oh yeah, jigs and slip jigs. But if somebody doesn't have a reference for that, that's, something you can sort of, oh yeah, this is a jig. Now I know more than you.
Dude, that was a great education for me. That's great. That is something I will remember now to pass on. Well done.
So, now we got that back. Let's come back to Bob Banerjee playing music. So, you have recorded how many CDs of Irish music? How many albums, let's put it that way?
Well, I've with Corned Beef and Curry, we have a total of 4, I think, out now. We have the original one called This Day. We have Pub Tings. Actually, we have 3 then, I guess. The latest one that we put on is called Live-ish Irish by Corned Beef and Curry Band. And it's really cool because here's what we did. We took a live show that we did at the Club Cafe in Pittsburgh. And again, with 3 pieces, right? With John and I in it. And what we did is we took that into the studio and we said, it's nice to have this as our base, but what we need to do is we will add further harmonies, we'll add further percussion. So what we did is essentially use the core of all the live stuff and then add a whole bunch of other things to make it a more studio produced, studio recorded album. So we had a lot of fun going through and adding some songs. So we were talking about Rocky Road to Dublin. That's on it. We have Star of the County Down, I think, or what else. But we also have really fun stuff from Van Morrison and Galway Girl by Steve Earle. We have a great version of that. So, not that I'm hawking the CD, but it's an opportunity for us to Americanize a lot of the traditional Irish tunes that we did and make it more rock and roll worthy and studio worthy. So that was our last major project. Since that point in time, I mean, I've also written and released a couple of CDs also, but they're not necessarily Irish. One is called La 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 Beer Me, and the other one is called Foreign Country, which has exactly what you would expect, a Indian playing cowboy music.
Nice.
Whether it's rock and roll or not. So those have been my projects, but I do have one that's in the works right now, which will be a violin instrumental CD. I have been working on this for a while, and it will have Irish tunes. It'll have, believe it or not, my attempt to do some Indian tunes on this, and it'll have some folky kind of tunes and some originals that I do with my loop box, because I really become very comfortable with using a loop box and using a backbeat and then building upon that, and so I'm looking forward to introducing that as my new project. So
awesome. Because that was going to be my next question: is what is the future of music for Bob Banerjee?
Well, that's a good question. All musicians are trying to figure this out because this, the virus has changed life as we know it. I do not expect that Corned Beef and Curry is going to get back to being able to entertain large crowds of people in a pub anytime soon. It's not there. So our projects are going to be, I think, more collaborative by internet than they've ever been before. I'm doing this right now almost every day of the week. I'm getting tracks in my Dropbox. I put them into my PreSonus Studio One music program. I add violin tracks, mandolin tracks to that, send back the WAV file of that to other musicians so that they can add whatever they want for effects or whatever they want to take out for their solos or whatever else. I think that's the future of a lot of collaboration near term until they get all the other stuff that's out there. So I'm always looking for new projects like that. That's going to be a real cool thing.
That's going to be one great. A lot of great art comes from adversity, or can come from adversity, whether it's positive art or critical art.
Right.
So it will be interesting to see what happens.
So I have this just came to me just now, Craig. I have a topic for you to try and dig into.
Oh, sure.
So we know this pandemic hasn't happened since 1917, 1918, right? With the Spanish.
Not in America.
Not in America. What happened to music then? How was music affected?
That is a great question.
Isn't that?
That is a great question.
So asking you as professor to professor here, I would leave it to you to talk to an audience and find out whether they or whether one of your students or somebody might be able to come up with it. And in the same way that it changed their legacy, in the same way that it changed their ability to perform and record back in those days, I would love to find out how to compare that to what we're going through right now. The closest that I can give you is one of my favorite stories, and I love sharing the stories. One of the influences that I have for playing music, especially in violin, is jazz violin. Jazz violin, specifically with Stefan Grappelli and Django Reinhardt. They played in a thing called the Hot Club of Paris in the middle of World War II. Wow. My favorite story is they're in Paris as the Germans are bombing all around them in the club that they're playing. And at one point, there was a bomb that explodes and all the power goes out. And what they do is they take everybody to the basement of the hot club. So just imagine, if you will, a small group of audience members all going down to this basement. And they've got all these players that took their instruments down with them, all acoustic, right?
Right.
To keep these audience members mellow during the time that the bombs were bursting around them. The legend is that those guys put on a concert in the basement as the bombs were flying around. I don't know how true it is, but as a folk story, that is it. That is
amazing. Else. Yeah, absolutely. And that is a great lead-in, actually, because my final question for this interview would be, how do you want to be remembered?
Sober?
As a musician? How about this? How do you want to be remembered as a musician? Because sober doesn't have to be part of that.
That's wonderful. God, that is ultimately the best philosophical question. I want to know that I've made a difference in your music. How's that for philosophy? I don't want to... I'm not a soloist. I don't want the attention, but I want to know that I helped you accomplish what you wanted, either listening to music, singing music, playing music. I'm thrilled to be part of other people's musical lives, and I'll continue to do that until it goes away from me. So that is how I want to be done.
I am thrilled to have you as part of sort of almost my extended family, your friendship with my brother, and sort of our, interactions as well. So it's already starting. You're already being thought of and remembered fondly. And again, you were the inspiration for me to actually get an Irish band going. So you are living it without even knowing it.
Well, as they say in Pittsburgh, right? Yins are good kids now.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bob. We're going to break until next episode. And thank you all for listening. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Journey into Irish Music. I'm Craig Mayhem signing off.
Journey into Irish Music, the podcast, episode 1. Bodhrán March and Kitty McGee, traditional, performed by Craig Mayhem. Morrison's Jig, traditional, performed by Sláinte. Used with permission via Creative Commons Attribution-Share Alike 3.0 United States license. Irish Washerwoman, traditional, performed by Howie and Ann Mitchell. Used with permission via Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike 3.0 United States license. Roth CO, The Mermaid, McPherson's Lament, traditional, performed by John McCann and Bob Banerjee. Used with permission. Morrison's Jig, traditional, performed by Corned Beef and Curry. Used with permission. La 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 Beer Me, copyright Bob Banerjee, performed by Bob Banerjee. Used with permission.